Welcome back to the CLSR, and I'm your host, the counselor. And I got to tell you that I'm feeling bad for a lot of people who are in situations where they're quite uncomfortable and they want to comfort a friend, but they don't know how. Well, today we're going to talk about comfort, how to provide comfort to a crying friend. See, if you find yourself confronted by a person who is crying, there are steps that you can take to make them feel better, whether they are your significant other, a friend, a co-worker. Comforting a crying person can strengthen your bond and make both them and yourself feel better. Now, there are ways to comfort a friend, and a lot of people just feel uncomfortable in the moment. They're not sure what they should do, but there are steps that you can take. First, I want you to assess the situation. There can be an infinite number of reasons why a person might be crying. Perhaps they are grieving, they're stressed out, they're ill, overwhelmed by joy. Before proceeding further, try to get a handle on what the situation might be and whether it is appropriate for you to try to comfort them. Some reasons why you might not be the right person to comfort them could be that if you are affected by the same situation that is upsetting them, if you are shaken up, disturbed, or hurt by the situation that may make them cry, you might not be in a good position to help them. If this is the case, you might want to seek out a support network who can help them and yourself cope with whatever is going on. If they are crying from joy, scientists aren't exactly sure why, but someone who is overcome with happiness might cry uncontrollably, just like someone who is scared or sad. In cases like these, congratulating your friend or lover might be more appropriate than trying to comfort them. If they're crying because you had a fight, both of you had a fight together, before stepping in to comfort them, you might want to calm down by yourself for a while to make sure that the argument doesn't start back up again. And when you decide to comfort them, unless there's a very good reason for you not to comfort them, you should make an effort to help them. Ignoring someone who is crying can be quite harmful to their emotional well being. Choosing to comfort someone will allow them to recover more quickly from their tears. It will also make your relationship stronger. So you have to kind of be a good listener. Now, this cannot be stressed enough. Tears are an important form of communication, and you should pay attention to what they are saying or trying to say. Use active listening techniques such as verbally affirming what the crying person is saying and avoiding interrupting them. In order to be the best listener you can be, allow them to feel what they're feeling. Just be there for them. Keep in mind that comforting is not about changing the other person's feelings. Be especially careful not to turn the conversation back to yourself. This is about them. Don't make it about you. Even if they're not behaving in the way you would like them to or expect them to, that doesn't mean that they don't deserve comfort. And they do deserve to be sad. Avoid phrases such as, if I were in your shoes, or have you tried, or when that happened to me, or I didn't make such a big deal out of it. These statements are not effective. You want to stay away from these statements. They do not help the situation. And don't minimize their pain or tell them not to cry. Tears can often be a good or positive action, even if they were caused by something painful. Crying can bring physical as well as emotional relief to someone who is sad or stressed. Bottling up emotions can prevent the healing from taking place, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Let them cry as much as they need to, and they will likely feel better if you allow them to do so. Avoid any commands, negative language, or imperatives. Stay away from phrases such as don't cry, you shouldn't be sad, or that doesn't sound too bad. It won't help them to claim to know all of the answers. Resist rushing right into what you think should or shouldn't resolve the problem. Don't claim to know everything they're going through or how to fix it. This may make them feel even worse or invalidated. People who are crying because of a mental illness such as severe anxiety or depression might actually feel worse, not better, after crying. If you think they might be crying because of mental illness, you should still offer comfort and support. But you should also suggest that they see a doctor so that they can get necessary treatment. And I want you to affirm their sadness, right? Show them that you understand their pain by acknowledging that their pain is legitimate. It's a legitimate feeling. And that you sympathize with them. Use phrases like, "That sucks. I'm really sorry that that happened." Or, "I understand that this must be very painful." Or possibly, "That sounds very frustrating. I'm sorry. No wonder you're upset. This sounds like a very difficult situation. I'm sorry that that happened to you." See, that really helps. That puts people at ease. That's support. And use nonverbal comforting techniques if you can. A crying person might recognize comfort more readily from nonverbal comforting cues than from verbal communication. Nodding, using appropriate facial expressions, making eye contact, leaning forward can help them know that you are concerned and that you care. While offering a tissue can sometimes be interpreted as a caring gesture, it might also send the signal that you want the crying to stop. Only provide a tissue if the crying person asks for one or seems to be looking around. Assess whether the physical contact is appropriate. Too many of you are trying to rush in and, grab somebody and hug them. You don't really want to do that. Because, you've seen those people where you try to hug them and then they just break away, "Don't touch me." That's because there was a communication breakdown somewhere. You just rushed in and thought you could save the day. Or you were genuine in your communication, but you took that person's emotion when they didn't want to be bottled up. The last thing that they wanted to be was tied down or feel enclosed. See, some people are comforted by touch, and others are made more anxious by it. You can offer a hug if you know that they respond well to hugging. Hugs can even help relieve stress over time. Other kinds of appropriate touch might be holding their hand, touching their shoulder, stroking their hair, or kissing their forehead. Now, this is with caution, okay? I don't want you to start holding somebody's hand and kissing on their forehead just because. You really have to know that person and basically know them for a long period of time and understand them. Aside from that, I would stay away from any contact unless you're very sure of the person and you know them and you've established rapport and you have a strong relationship. Use your best judgment based on what you know about them, preferences, and the boundaries of your relationship. Always follow their lead. Don't just try to take it into your own hands. Be sure to back off if they ask you to. You can also observe their body language to determine whether they might be open to comforting touch. Defensive body language such as clenched fists, crossed arms and legs, or avoiding eye contact might mean that they would rather you back off just a little bit. So you got to pay attention to that. Those nonverbal cues. Resist the urge to avoid the situation. See, many people are uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable with being around someone who is crying. If this is you, you might rush into saying something that you think will help while not knowing what to say. Or you might find a way to escape the situation. This will only make matters worse for them. If you don't know what to do, try saying something like, "I'm sorry you're upset. Is there anything I could do for you to make it better?" This will at least show them that you care, which may be comforting to them. Offer help instead of problem solving. It's easy to get caught up in trying to fix things the way you think is best. However, they may not want help or may need something other than what you think they need. The last thing you want to do is make a situation worse. Resist the urge to problem solve something when what you should be doing is helping them process their pain and grief. Let them know that you're there to help, but don't force it. Their idea of help may simply be having someone to talk to. Often listening is the best way to help comfort someone. Ask open-ended questions about whether you can help them out. Is there anything I could do to help? Or I'd really like to help. Can you think of anything that might make the situation better? This might be a good way to start a conversation about how you can lend a hand. Sometimes someone who is upset is too overwhelmed to suggest ways for you to help them. If this is the case, try providing a list of a few specific things you might be able to do to comfort them. Like you might ask if they might like to go out for ice cream, or if they would like for you to stop by later and, have a movie together. Or you could watch something. See if they respond positively to any of these comforting suggestions. And step in to help if it's appropriate. While trying to problem solve shouldn't be your first instinct, it is possible that there are some tangible, specific things you could do to help relieve their pain. If it is possible for you to remove their troubles, and if they seem to want you to, then you can offer to step in some way. Like if they're crying because they're stressed out from work, you might offer to do some extra chores around the house to give them more time to focus on their job. Or if they're crying because they had a fight with a friend, you might discuss ways for them to repair that relationship. Check in on them. In the next few days or weeks after the crying incident, check in occasionally on them to make sure they're still doing okay. Don't be too invasive about it. But asking them out for some coffee, or asking them how they're doing, or calling a bit more often could be very helpful. Just checking in on people. It is possible that they will recover quickly, but they might also need some extra time to get over their sadness. Showing your support over that time will help a lot. A little bit of checking every once in a while. Don't overdo it. And you got to take care of yourself. Empathy is important, but it might also cause you to be upset or depressed. Remember to take care of yourself too, and reach out to others if you need help. It's very important to show empathy. In general, people prefer to cry in front of people they're close to, not in front of strangers, co-workers, or acquaintances. If you're not close to them, but they're still crying in front of you, it's probably quite a distressful situation indeed. And there's going to be some sympathy that's needed, right? It is especially important for you to react with empathy and not with annoyance, panic, or fear. Allow them to cry. If they do in fact want you around, let them cry. Don't try to force them to stop crying and suggest that, they buck up. Or crying is natural and healthy and can help relieve this stress and pain. And we got to always remember this. Remember, there is nothing unprofessional about tears at work. Most people cry sometimes. So crying at work is bound to happen at one time or another. Tell them that, tell them reassuring things. Especially if it seems embarrassing to them, such as it's okay to cry, or there's nothing embarrassing about crying. We're all human. You're allowed to express yourself. Demonstrate that you are available to talk to. See, we're talking about you being in a work situation, and you're going to have some people around that might occasionally have a cry. And, as opposed to you running away or feeling embarrassed or ashamed and not knowing what to do, you got to know that once in a while, even in the workplace, things are going to happen. So as long as you demonstrate that you're available to talk to, this is going to help them, because they don't know, you that well, for example, and they might not want to go into too much detail with you, especially if it's somebody you're unfamiliar with. But perhaps you could be a helpful listening ear, regardless of how close the relationship is. Somebody cries in front of you, sometimes it's just better to be a good listener, right? Ask questions and use open body language to show that you are willing to listen if they want you to. Like you could say, I know, I'm your colleague, but I'm also happy to be your friend if you need someone to talk to. Do you want to talk? Or you also could say, my door is always open if you need to talk about something difficult. And if there is something I can help you with, even if it's not about work, I'm happy to listen. Employ these active listening skills. I can't even emphasize that enough. If they decide to talk to you about their troubles, use active listening techniques to show that you are paying attention. These include not interrupting or providing suggestions, asking questions only to affirm that you understand what they're saying, making eye contact and avoiding any distractions. Give them that attention. Be empathetic and be professional, because the workplace is a unique place. And a lot of people don't expect people to cry, but sometimes it's going to happen. You should act like a human being and show that you care, but you also don't want to overstep any boundaries with a coworker. After all, your work relationship will have to continue even after this incident. Like, you might, for example, not want to offer a hug unless she asks for one. If you want to call her or him outside of work to check up on them, you should ask whether, they would be comfortable with that. And you got to make sure you keep yourself in check. Don't be calling all the time. Make sure your interest is really in them, not for your personal interest. There are some people out there that want to be calling. They like this person, and this person shows a moment of weakness at work, and then they get the number, and then they want to capitalize on that. We want to be careful and cautious about that. We're going to cautious against doing that. You don't try to call somebody from work because you see they're vulnerable. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is you don't do anything unless that person wants you to do it. And don't try to take advantage of them, because a lot of people will be vulnerable. All right? So keep that in mind. Offer assistance with work-related matters if needed. Perhaps your coworker is crying because of work stress, or perhaps there is a personal matter that is affecting their ability at work. In either case, if you are in a position to help professionally, you might help find some sort of solutions. Like, they might need to take some time off, or you might help them make a plan to get through a difficult professional task. Only take action if they want action. However, it's easy to get caught up in trying to fix things the way you want or you think is best. However, they might not want help, or may need something other than what you think they need. The last thing you want to do is make a situation worse. Don't try to step in about personal matters too much. Don't feel like you need to solve personal problems of a coworker. Also, if you don't know them very well, do not presume that you know how to solve their problems. Be there to comfort and listen and focus on workplace issues and keep it to the workplace. If you see no way that you are able to help them fix the problem, then apologize and tell them that you cannot help them fix the problem. If you know anyone who can help them fix the problem, recommend that they talk to them and enlist their help. Now, I think it's so important for us to comfort people, but there are ways to do it. And I think some important lessons to think about is that you don't want to help people if you're not sure how to help. So it's important that you take these suggestions and strategies seriously. You don't just get that emotional come in, I'm going to rescue feeling. You want to make sure you take your time. Approach the situation by assessing the situation carefully. All right? Think of the other person. Keep their best interest in mind. And if you don't know how to help, say, listen, you know what? I'm sorry, I can't help. However, I can recommend this. The counselor always says that whenever you see someone going through it, you don't try to always fix it. Too many of us are trying to fix things. So I do strongly recommend that some of you take the time out to get some assistance. See a counselor if you need to. Your doctor if you're going through a lot. Whereas somebody's, they're going through this crying situation and it's really depressing you to the point where you're having a difficult time trying to deal with it. See, a lot of us feel for people, and what happens is when we feel so much that it's almost like we're adopting some of that emotion. And some of you trying to help might adopt some of that emotion, and it could get too much and it could turn into some depression. And you don't even realize that it's really bringing you down. You're just in your feelings. And I think it's important for us to realize that we don't want to try to help too much to the point where it makes us unable to cope, or we're feeling down all the time. Sometimes you got to distance yourself from them. It's true. You're going to have to take some steps sometimes to limit some of that impact if it becomes overwhelming. See, that's where you got to take care of yourself. And it's okay to cry, but don't think that you have to save the situation. And remember, you have to assess the situation and make sure that you're not being too intrusive. Okay, sometimes the best thing you could do is sit back and observe, right? Not stare at the person, observe, let them go through it. And if you see that they're done and they need somebody to talk to, just, give your little input and support. But do it gradually. Don't just come in to rescue. Do little things that will make the situation better. And if you see that the person is not responding to you well, step back and give them their space. I think one of the biggest things that we fail to do is we fail to give people time and space so that they can work through what they're working through. Sometimes you have to give people space, even though you feel it, your emotion. So be careful. Watch your emotions. Think before you act. Okay, so I want to say, comforting someone who is crying takes some skill. And it is important for you to know who you're dealing with. And sometimes if you don't know exactly that person very well, try to limit too much intrusiveness, being too involved. Get involved gradually or do little things to show your support. Or find somebody who you know is familiar with that individual and get them involved. Get the hold of that person. Maybe it's not you. Maybe you're not the one that should intervene. Well, whatever the case is, I want you all to be like the wise old bird and spread the word. Because we know during these times, especially now, there are going to be some people at work that are going to have a lot on their mind. They're going to be carrying a heavy load. And their emotions are going to be high. And they are going to cry. And it's important that we talk about this. So I want you to be like the wise old bird and spread the word. Take care of yourself.